today about AP automation. So how can we get some of that manual entry, that day-to-day key-in that we're doing into a little bit more automated functionality so that we're less practicing our typing and really focusing on what's important, and that's the operations of our business. So the process flow with the AP bill automation is that we, one, receive those bills in, so we get those in from our vendors, and we can get those into the system either through an email or through an upload. And then it's going to go through a process to digitize that. It's going to put in the information that it can populate from those different vendor invoices that we're getting, give you an opportunity to review those and approve those, and then process those through the AP process. So what we're really focusing on today is that process of receiving and digitizing, and then on into that review. From that point forward, it's that normal AP process, right, of paying those bills, printing those checks, doing that ACH processing. So we're really going to focus on that upfront piece of it, of just that getting that bill into the system and taking some of that manual entry out of that process. So a couple reasons why people are looking at using AP bill automation. One, it accelerates your bill to pay process because you're spending less time on manual data entry, and you're really then focusing on higher value things like reviewing those bills, making sure that they're accurate versus just that time that it takes to key those in and type those in. With machine learning, it also allows you to kind of rely more on the system and less on that human piece of making sure that things are accurate and checking for errors, checking for duplicates, highlighting bills that are kind of out of the norm and things like that. So it gives you an opportunity to have a second set of eyes, if you will, on those, and not just relying on your AP team that's keying those in to really make sure that those are accurate. It's giving you, a backup and additional support to really check those bills. Okay. This slide has a lot of information on it, so I'm not going to read this to you, but you'll get copies of this video and you can kind of pause that and read this as well. But we just want to give you some background here on the trust that you can place in this, because I know with the automation and, we get bombarded with that every day. So how do we know what we can trust and what we can't? Well, Intacct has spent an enormous amount of time ensuring that their artificial intelligence, their machine learning, the rules that they have in place for that, the iterations that it runs through to make sure that it's accurate, that they give you a system that you can trust. So they collect information on the Sage network on how to read bills. So they're not just looking necessarily at bills that you are getting, but they're looking at bills across the Sage network. So if everybody's getting bills on Intacct from the same vendor, from an ADP, an AT&T, a Verizon, whomever it is, those bills are consistently used. Now, everybody's getting different data on those bills, but the bills themselves, the structure of them, where the data is, it's the same. So they're looking not just at what you're getting, but across the entire Sage network to build that learning and know what to recognize on those bills. Where's that vendor number? Where's that invoice number on that bill? So it's not just relying on your data set, it's looking across the entire Sage network to really give you precise data. It also has built in learning. So it learns from you as you go in and you make changes to those bills or corrections that the system has brought in automatically. It's taking that back, it's putting it in its memory and saying, hey, I remember last time you got this bill, you made this change. So I need to be smart and remember that and put that change in place next time so you don't have to do that again. So it's learning from those things that you're doing as well. And then it's looking for consistency in what the changes that you're making versus just those one-off changes. So it's learning what's repetitive versus just those random scenarios where you get in a bill that's not the norm, but you still got to pay it. So it's kind of learning from that as well. So it's looking, again, across an entire Sage network to really get that precise data and collective data, and looking across those similar vendors that everybody's using, or not everybody, but a lot of people are using. And then it's learning from what you're doing in your company-specific scenario, in your specific environment, to give you the best bang for what it's pulling in. Okay? So there's two ways, again, I mentioned that you can get those bills into the system. You can submit them by email. So when you do that, you're going to get a stage provisioned email address. So you don't have to set up an email box that's dedicated to this. It's going to be a stage provisioned email address. You can have different email addresses if you're bringing your transactions in at top level or at entity level so that that data gets into the right place when it comes into the system. You can forward emails to it. So if the vendor emails you a bill and it's got a bill as an attachment, you can just forward it directly into that email address. You can send a single email with multiple bills attached. So if you have a lot of bills that you've scanned in that maybe you got in the mail, you just scanned those all in, you can attach those all to an email and send those to that dedicated email inbox in one big email. You don't have to send a separate email for each one, and it's going to pull those in. You can also have the vendors send the bills directly to that email address. The couple of notes on that we do want to say is you don't want to necessarily send in copies of receipts and extra attachments and things like that in those emails because it will attempt to create a bill for those because it sees that individual attachment as a record that it needs to pull into the system. So you do want to kind of clean those up, and that's, you don't want to send in a bunch of extra copies of receipts and PDF forms if they're sending you instructions for ACH or wire payments, and those are all coming in as attachments. You may want to delete those out of that before you forward that email in, just so that you're only getting those bills. And then, valid email attachments, all types of file types, PDF, JPEG, TIFF, PNG files, all of those are acceptable files. They do have to be unencrypted. So if you are sending an encrypted PDF, it's not going to read that. They need to be less than 20 meg in size and fewer than 200 pages in length. And I hope for all of your sake that nobody's getting a bill that's over 200 pages in length, but it certainly could happen. And in that case, that's kind of a one-off that we need to handle separately. So those are how you can get those bills in by email. Similarly, you can upload the bills directly into the system. So this is not the same as attaching the bills that you're potentially doing now, where you're keying that bill in and then you're adding that attachment and dragging that in. This is going to actually be up front of that, where you're uploading the bill into the system, and then it's going to fill in the data and kind of populate that for you. So again, you have the ability to do this at top level or at the entity, either one. You can set the location to use on the default if there's no prior bill. So when we get into the next couple slides, it's going to show you where it's pulling that data from. So you do have to choose when you upload a bill a location in case it doesn't know where it needs to put this, because we all know location is a required field on every transaction that we enter. So then we determine how we want those line items to be generated for the bills. Do you want one lump sum line item for that entire bill, or do you want to see the line detail and the breakout that they put on those lines if they send you multiple lines on those bills? And you may kind of wonder, why didn't we mention these same things on the email settings? On the email settings, you configure that and set that up on the email configuration so that each time you email it, you don't have to make that choice. When you upload it, it's giving you that choice to make it that time so that you can handle those differently. So it's those same choices are available when we do it in an email. It's just pre-configured, so you're not doing it on the fly. You can then either just drag and drop files, or you can browse out and upload those files. You can upload up to 30 bills at one time. So you can just, again, you've got those bills you've scanned in that you got in the mail. They're saved out on your desktop. You can just click on 30 of them at once, click upload, and it's going to create the bills for those 30 at one time. Same file type restrictions are in place. PDFs, JPEGs, all those different file types must be unencrypted, less than 20 meg and fewer than 200 pages. So similar requirements, whether you're uploading them, emailing them, for those file types and different scenarios there. Next that you'll see here, the field details, the bill header. So this is where the information is coming from. So when it pulls that data in, and we have that bill in, and it's going to start kind of calculating and pulling that data in to key that in for you. These are some of the fields. I'm not going to, again, read all of these, but you'll be able to see this. This is also available in the help section on Sage Intacct, so you'll be able to kind of see where that's coming from. But essentially what it's looking for is data on that bill. So the bill date, it's going to look at that image of that bill and find that date. If it doesn't see a bill date, or it can't find it, it can't read it, whatever the case is, then it's going to use the system date. If you have your system set up where it's a different bill date and GL's posting date, it's going to obviously not be smart enough to know, that there's those two different dates in there, that it, what to use for those different dates. So it's going to put that same bill date in there. For the vendors, it's going to look and use that AI predictor to kind of find the best match of that vendor. If it can't find that vendor with any confidence, then it's going to just leave that field blank, and it's going to put an exception on that and say this needs to be resolved so that you can fix that bill and finish that populating that data. So it's looking for the data, but if it can't with confidence fill that in, then it's going to let you know that there's something on that image of that bill that it couldn't read or couldn't identify what to put in Intacct, and it needs you to step in and help with that. So it's not just going to, pick a different vendor. It's going to let you know, hey, you need to step in and intervene here because I can't with confidence answer this question. Okay. So similarly, pay to, return to, all of those different things, terms, it's going to pull those from vendors, but it's going to, also then go back, or to pull those from the images on the invoice, but it's also going to look at your setup in the system, what's set up on your vendor for your terms codes. If there's not a terms code, then it's going to leave that blank, and it's going to put a due date on there from the bill. So maybe you don't have a terms code set up on that vendor to default in. And so then it's going to say, okay, I don't see a terms code. Now I need to go look on that bill for a due date. If I can't find one, then I'm going to leave that field blank and again, give you an exception that lets you know you need to resolve that. Okay. Similarly on the bill line. So this is always a big question, is how does it know how to code this? So what it's looking for is how you've done this in the past. So where we said that it's learning from you, this is where it's going back and saying, the last time you got this bill from this vendor, this is how you coded it. So it's going to look back historically at those prior bills from that vendor and use the last prior one to determine how to code that. Okay, so this is where it gets in a little bit of a kind of a, muddy waters, if you will, in that, maybe that bill is different every single solitary time. So you are going to have to maybe do some steps to intervene and make sure that that coding is correct. And then you're going to have to determine, is that a scenario where doing this automation is helping me or not? Because if every time I'm having to go in and fix that, maybe that's not a situation where this is helpful. But if it applies that vendor bill is the same or close to the same every time, and the amounts change, then absolutely this automation is going to save you some time, because it's going to look back at how you did that before. So for that account, for example, it's going to look at the corresponding line item in that bill for that vendor for the last bill. So if that last bill had 5 lines on it, the new bill has 5 lines on it, it's going to say, how did you code line 1 last time? And is line 1 the same this time? I need to code it the same way. So it's looking for that matching correspondence for those prior bills. And that's how it's determining how to fill that in. If it doesn't see that, then it's going to go back again to my system setup and say, okay, I don't see a corresponding account. Let me go look at the vendor record. Do I have a default set up there that I should use instead? Maybe I don't have a default set up there. I'm going to leave that field blank because I can't, as a system with confidence, fill that in. So I need you to tell me what to do. Okay. And then it's going to learn from that. So the next time you enter that, it's going to say, hey, last time you told me this is what you needed me to do. I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to remember that this time and do that for you. So now it's just getting smarter and smarter over time. So again, each of these fields that are important that you have to fill out, those dimensions you're using, the amount, those GL accounts, all of that is looking, how did you do it before? Is this the same, and can I do it the same way again? Okay.
Teresa, we have a question.
Yeah.
If a bill from a vendor has multiple bills, in one attachment, can you split up those bills in Sage Intacct, or would they need to be split before forwarding, uploading to the system?
Excellent question. So at this point in time, it does not take those and separate those out. So there's not a way in that single file for it to identify when there's a page break and it needs to start something new. Not something that's built in there now. So they would have to be separate attachments or separate files for those. Not to say that that's not something that they wouldn't add at some point in the future, but it's not, unfortunately, not available now. So it does have to be a separate attachment for each bill. Very good question. Thank you. Okay. All right. So now we're going to jump over here and we're going to get into the product and kind of show you what's going on here. So let me get into my demo system. Again, this is just a demo system, so it's just lots of random data out here. But you'll notice here that I am staying here at my top level. I'm just in my accounts payable and bills. I don't have a way to demo the email functionality in here, but it's similar. You're just going to have a dedicated email address and you're going to send that to that email. Everything else is going to be the same. So I'm going to walk through the upload process with you. So what you're going to see on the accounts payable bills when you configure this or set this up is you will have an upload button now. So when I click on that upload button, then again, as I mentioned kind of in those slides, I have to choose a default location so that it knows where to populate that if none of my other rules apply. I can't find it from another vendor or from a prior bill, so I don't know where to put this, and this is going to be my default. And then I'm going to tell it, do I want a single line for everything on that bill that summarizes my total bill, or do I want to see all the line items? I want to see all the details, so that's my choice. I'm going to select. I can drag and drop those files here. I can just browse out to them. And I've got quite a few samples here. I'm not going to pick all of them, so I'm just going to pick a few here and select those. And so you'll see I've got some different file sizes, different file types, or all PDFs, but some different invoices here. And once I have those in place, then I'm just going to say create the bill. So once you do that, then you'll see you also have a refresh button. And I can click on that refresh, and you'll see it is going to start bringing that data in and saying it's analyzing that. So it's pulling those attachments in and it's reading that data so that it can start populating that information and filling those in. So you can see I've already done a few here. So while this is refreshing here, which it doesn't take long to do, but we'll kind of keep an eye on the time here and see how long it takes to do these bills. I think I did 7 of them. Yeah, 7 of them here. So you can see already it's filled in 2, and it's got a message here that says there's something on there that needs to be resolved. So the file cannot be read in that case. So apparently in that one, I've got a file out there that the image is fuzzy or something like that, and it can't read that. So it's going to give you that message to let you know that you have something that needs to be resolved. And so I'm just going to hit my refresh button again and see where any of these other ones are at. But you'll see also that it's going to let you know if you have a duplicate. So I did this one previously because I wanted to point out something that's really unique about this, that is something that I think is a really powerful aspect of this, is you'll notice on this first bill here, and you kind of see the amounts are the same. It's $332,981. The first time I pulled that in and imported it, I set it to a test TLAM vendor, and I actually changed the bill number that was on that. So the system looks at that and says, that's the invoice number. When I uploaded that one again, even though it did not have the exact same bill number, because I changed that in the system, so the system would not flag that as a duplicate. I also changed the vendor and let it read that as the correct vendor that was on that invoice versus changing that like I did. But you'll notice that it still flagged it as a duplicate because the image itself and the data that was on that was still appearing to the system as a duplicate. So it's letting me know that I need to look at that, because maybe I have a problem because I have two bills, two separate vendors, two different invoice numbers that the system would not have flagged as a duplicate if I were manually keying those in and just dragging those attachments in. But the system is smart enough to see that image itself is the same and it's a potential duplicate. Doesn't mean that I can't say, yeah, you're right, it looks like a duplicate, but it's still okay and I can still process that and post that. But that's very powerful in that it's not just relying on that data that we normally key in, vendor name or vendor number and bill number, to flag it as a duplicate. It's also looking at the data itself and that image that it's scanned in to alert me and say, hey, that's a potential duplicate that you need to look at. So if I go and actually open that and look at that, you'll see here with my image here that, you know, I have it just set to a test vendor, but it's letting me know that this is a potential duplicate and giving me a link here to view that original bill. So it's looking not, again, at just those two pieces of data that it relies on when you have that duplicate bill warning or error set in your system configuration. It's actually looking at the image itself to say whether or not it thinks this is a duplicate. It's a very powerful piece of the software, because otherwise you wouldn't know that. It's not going to catch that if you have it set to different vendors or it's a different invoice number. So really taking that to the next step to look at that data and try to validate that as well, and make sure that we're not getting you know, fraudulent invoices that we're paying to a bunch of different vendors and it's the same invoice. So just giving that, again, data that we can trust, because it's looking, it's giving us that second set of eyes from a system perspective. Okay. So I'm just going to close that guy back down here and look, and you can see now in that amount of time that I was kind of talking there, all the rest of these have done and completed. So you can see that they're in draft status. So that means that I can go in and review those, and then if I have workflow turned on, I can submit those to be posted, or to be passed through that workflow to be approved. If I don't have workflow turned on and I review those, then I can just post those, and those bills are going to be set up. So again, I've got that duplicate warning for that same one that I imported in. So you can see I've got it in here now 3 times. Oh, no, sorry, that's a different duplicate. I've got this guy in there a couple times. So it's just telling me when it's seeing things that are duplicates in the system, so that I can alert to that, look at that, see if I need to reverse that or delete that back out of the system. Okay. So when I go in and look at any of these, we'll just look at this guy, since it doesn't seem to have any other issues. Again, I'm going to have my invoice image right here on the side from that option that you can turn on to see that in that split screen. So I've got that image right here on the side. I can see that data that it's populating, so I can see it's pulling that date right here from that date. It's got my due date in here. It did not have a terms code set up on this vendor, so it's pulling that due date right here from this image. It's got that bill number that is pulled right here from that image. And it's looked and said, how did I either code this previously to put my location, my department information, all of that in there, my GL accounts? How did I do that before, so that I know how to code that now? Again, if I update this, it's going to go back and it's going to learn how I made those changes. So the next time, tomorrow, next week, next month, when I get this same bill in from this vendor and it's got the same lines on there and it looks the same, this one doesn't really have any description, so it's not a great example, but it looks the same, has that same information on there, then it's going to say, hey, I know how you did that last time, so I'm going to update that. So again, once this is all in place and I've reviewed everything, it's all good, I can just submit that and then post that to the system, or it would go through workflow. If I had workflow turned on, now it's available to pay. So within 4 minutes of time there, I got 7 invoices into the system, populated and with the data from the bill, as well as actually coding those to the GL line. So it's pulling that information in there and has that in there. I just have to do a review and then post that. or submit that into my workflow. So very easy to get those bills into the system. So this is available again through the upload through the email. So if those are going in through email, you'll also see those on this list view. That source will just say, instead of bill upload, it will say email on there. It will still go through and show you any import exceptions. If there's anything, as we saw that first one, that it couldn't read that image at first, as it continued to scan it, it kind of cleared up and was able to read that image. So it resolved itself. I didn't have to do anything to it. It just kind of kept trying and then got that information. And so then if I had any exceptions or anything that it couldn't code or didn't know how to code, it would give me that message over here that I needed to resolve that and fix that. In this case, it was able to pull all those data except for those duplicates. Everything's coded. I just have to review those, do that final review of them, and then submit those and post those. So very quickly can get that data into the system automatically, saving me some keying time. It's got those attachments already attached out there, those images. I didn't have to drag and drop those in there. Those images are stored out in under your attachments folder, or under your attachments here for your AP bills, just like your other attachments. So everything else at this point is exactly the same in the system. I can still go pay those bills the same way. I can still process them through workflow, all the same. All I really did was just take that manual entry aspect out of it and let the system do that heavy lift for me. Okay. All right. Let me check and see if we have any other questions. So yeah, so next good question, and kind of segue into the next thing that I was going to talk to you about is this available for everyone? You know, things like that. Is there a charge for this? All of that information. So thank you for kind of leading me into that next place there. I'm going to jump back over here to my PowerPoint here. So the AP automation module itself, there is no charge for. You can turn that on in your system. We can help you turn that on. There is a per transaction charge for the system to read and process that document and get that into the system. You can either do that on a per transaction, where it just counts how many you've done in a month and then processes that. If you are going to use this heavily, you can purchase like a package of transactions where it will let you know, it's this many, whatever the rate is for this number of transactions in a month over the year, and that's just added to your annual subscription. That pricing, we can work with you individually to get that for your subscription and let you know what that'll be. So if you have interest in looking at this and you want to kind of get more information, just reach out to us. You can either reach out to us on our Intacct support at microaccounting.com or myself directly. Any one of us that you've worked with on the team, you can reach out to them. They can get the message over to us, and then we can work with you to figure out what that pricing is and if that's appropriate. So again, the module is no charge to turn that on and add that to your system. We do have to actually go in and place an order for it and add it to your subscription, but there's no charge for that. So we do need to work with you if you want to turn that on, so that we can get that added into your system and get that configured. We're happy to do that with you, and then we can talk with you about pricing. If it's something that you want to just try with a couple of invoices, we can certainly turn that on, let you try it with a couple of invoices and decide if you want to pursue that and use that more widespread. So we can work with you to kind of answer any of those questions you have. So reach out to us, either, again, our support, any of our team directly, myself, and we can certainly help with that. The next question I see that we have out here is, does this work with purchasing? At this point, the purchasing aspect of it is in beta testing. So right now it's only available strictly in the AP module. So if you are using the purchasing because we either needed that to give you that more complex workflow availability that you had, or we're using it for purchasing, or you have purchase requisitions and purchase orders and receipts and things like that with those invoices. It's not available for that yet with that automation where you can upload those bills, but that is in beta testing. So it's going to be out there soon. I don't have a release date for that at this point in time, but typically once we see it in beta, it's not too long before we do see it out in the product, because it's actually kind of in, I guess, the second phase of beta, really, where it's beta users. So it's not just the beta testing that Intacct does. It's actually got some users out there testing it. So that is going to be coming soon as well, to have that on the purchasing side. So if you are using purchasing, don't get discouraged. That will be out there soon to use, but you can still potentially use this just for the AP side of it. If you have those utility bills, things like that are coming in that you want to kind of process through this aspect that you're not using the purchasing for, let us know. We'll be happy to talk to you about any of those, how we can help you accommodate this and get this set up. We see that the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, all of that aspects they're really ramping up, and Intacct is doing a lot of work on those to make our lives easier. It's in no way, shape, or form intended to replace a staff person or do any of that or take over our jobs. The computers are, as much as I would love for it to take over all of my job and not have to do anything, that's just not realistic, and it's not going to happen. But what it is letting you do is focus on the higher value things and those things that are important versus just practice and typing in your AP bills on a month-to-month basis. So let it automate what it can, and let you focus on the things that are important, of making sure those bills are getting paid on time, making sure that you're keeping those relationships with those vendors happy, and you're current, and you've got all that in place versus just spending your time typing in bills. So we're super excited to see where this is going. Intacct is at their last conference, they did a lot of information that they passed out with Sage Copilot and some more things that are coming with some of this automation. So this is kind of the front edge of that. We're super excited to see where this is going to be going as they keep investing in this automation. So hopefully this has been informative for you and helpful, and we'd love to help you and talk to you more about it if you are interested. So just reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I don't see any other questions in that we didn't get to, but if you do have any questions, reach out to us. As always, we do also appreciate any feedback on our webinars. So if you have something that you would like for us to talk about on a webinar, let us know. We'd be happy to schedule webinars on anything that is relevant to our client base. So if there's something that you're interested in, probably somebody else is as well. So let us know. We'll be happy to chat with you about that and see if we can get that on our schedule as well. So thank you for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and certainly reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. Take care.